Before the creation of the universe, there was only Brahman, the unmanifested, infinite, and formless essence. Brahman existed in a state of absolute oneness, without any division or differentiation. It was all that existed, yet it was also beyond existence. In this state, there was no space, no time, no world, and no individual selves. Brahman was pure consciousness, without form or limitation. In this unmanifested state, Brahman was like the seed that contained the potential for all creation, yet it remained hidden within itself, unexpressed and undivided. But the time came for Brahman to manifest, and so the process of creation began. The creation, Brahman's desire to manifest. According to the Aitreya Upanishad, Brahman, in its absolute oneness, desired to create the universe. It decided to manifest itself into many forms, to experience the world in its multiplicity. From the formless and infinite consciousness, Brahman began the process of creation, and the first step was to create the cosmic mind, the Mahad or the universal principle of intelligence and thought. In a great act of will and wisdom, Brahman created the cosmic mind, and from it emanated the elements that would form the basis of the universe. The universe began to take shape, and the elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, emerged from this cosmic mind. With these elements, the entire physical world began to take form. At this point, Brahman decided to enter the created world, not as an external force but as the essence within it. So, it entered into all the elements and all the forms of life, from the highest to the lowest. The manifestation of the individual self. Once the cosmic creation began, Brahman, in its infinite wisdom, chose to manifest itself as the individual self, Atman, in the created beings. The individual self, the essence within all living beings, was none other than Brahman itself in a different form. The Upanishad describes the process as follows. Brahman creates the first human being. After creating the elements and the cosmic principles, Brahman, in the form of the individual self, created the first human being. This being was endowed with the individual consciousness, the same consciousness that was within Brahman itself. Thus, every human being, and indeed every living being, contains a reflection of the supreme reality within. The first human being's awakening. This first human being was initially unconscious, unaware of its true nature. But as time passed, the being became aware of the vastness of existence and began to experience the world. This awakening was not just an individual experience, but a reflection of the larger awakening of Brahman within creation. Brahman's entry into the body. As the first human being began to take form, Brahman entered into the body, filling it with life. The breath, the mind, and the senses all came into existence as manifestations of Brahman's energy. The body became the vehicle for the soul, and the soul, or the Atman, remained the essence of Brahman. The soul's journey through creation. As Brahman entered the universe and the individual beings, it began a journey of self-discovery. The Atman, though appearing as an individual self, was never separate from Brahman. It was simply a reflection of the same supreme reality in the created world. Each individual self was part of the whole, and the journey of life was one of realizing this oneness with Brahman. The cosmic being and the individual self, unity and separation. The key teaching of the Aitreya Upanishad is the unity of the individual self, Atman, with the supreme being, Brahman. In the beginning, when Brahman created the world, it divided itself into many forms, but at the deepest level, it remained indivisible and whole. Each individual being, human, animal, plant, and even inanimate objects, was infused with the same divine essence. However, due to the limitations of the body and mind, beings became ignorant of their true nature. They saw themselves as separate from the rest of the world and from the Supreme Being. The essence of Brahman within each being was hidden behind the veil of ignorance, and the individual self wandered through life, seeking purpose and fulfillment. But the ultimate realization came when the individual realized that their true nature was not separate from Brahman. The Atman was not different from the divine consciousness that created the world. The same consciousness that pervaded the universe also resided within them. The story of Brahman's return to itself. As the creation continued to evolve, Brahman's ultimate goal was to return to its original state of oneness. The process of creation was not a one-time event but an ongoing journey, a cycle of manifestation and dissolution. As beings progressed along their spiritual journey, they began to understand that they were not separate from Brahman. The ultimate goal of each being was to realize their oneness with the Supreme Reality. The Upanishad narrates that when an individual realizes their true nature as Brahman, they transcend the limitations of the body and mind. They experience a union with the cosmic being and return to the source from which they came. This realization is not an intellectual understanding, but an experiential one, where the individual sees the world and their own being as an expression of Brahman. The moral of the story: the unity of Brahman and the individual self. Brahman is the source of creation. The creation of the universe is not random but comes from Brahman, the Supreme Reality. The elements, the mind, the senses, and all beings are manifestations of Brahman's will. The individual self is not separate from Brahman. The individual self, Atman, is the same as Brahman. Though it may appear to be separate due to ignorance and the limitations of the body and mind, the essence of the individual is always connected to the divine. Self-realization is the goal of life. The ultimate goal of life is to realize that the self is not separate from Brahman. This realization leads to spiritual liberation, moksha, where one transcends the cycle of birth and death and returns to the source of all existence. Unity in diversity. Though the universe appears to be filled with countless forms and beings, at the deepest level, all are one. The diversity we see in the world is simply a manifestation of the infinite forms that Brahman can take. The story of the cosmic being in the Aitreya Upanishad teaches us that the universe is the creation of Brahman, and that all beings, though appearing separate, are in essence one with the Supreme Reality. Brahman, in its infinite wisdom, entered into the created world as the individual self, allowing each being to experience life and seek self-realization. Ultimately, the purpose of life is to recognize that we are not separate from Brahman, but that the same divine essence that created the universe also resides within us.